You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Astonishing Legends Network.
Disclaimer. This episode includes the usual amount of adult language and graphic discussions you've come to expect around here. But in the event it becomes an unusual amount, expect another call from me.
Welcome back to Scared All the Time. I'm Chris Cullari.
And I'm Ed Voccola.
And this week, get ready to drop dead. That's right, we're kicking off Season 4 with a look at one of the scariest things I can think of. Sudden, unpredictable, instant death.
Oh, no.
I'm willing to risk a panic attack to entertain you and maybe give you a panic attack of your own, so you're welcome. One of the best and worst things about being human is that we all die. It's the great equalizer and the thing that really gives our lives meaning. If life didn't end, I'm not sure it would matter. It's like anything else you have an endless supply of, you get tired of it eventually. It's why so many immortal characters in fiction are miserable. Forever is a curse. But just because death is natural and important doesn't mean we want it to come for us anytime soon. And when it does, we don't want to be robbed of those last moments with our loved ones, or ourselves. Those moments also give our life context, a chance to look back and take it all in before we fade into the next life. And that's what makes sudden death so scary. It's just a smash to black when you least expect.
What are we?
Scared.
When are we?
All the time.
Join us.
Now it is time for
Scared All the Time.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Season 4 of Scared All the Time. We've only been off a couple of weeks, but I feel like Ed and I have both lived multiple lives in the time since we signed off for Season 3. It has been an insane month and a half filled with good things, bad things, difficult things, no easy things. But I guess let's dive in. Ed, do you want to start with the thank yous for the road trip? Because I know you have a lot of people who helped you out on your way across the country.
Yeah, no, it was great. I love driving across the country, and this time was extra fun because, I was able to connect with some fans, and people gave a lot of great recommendations. I mean, there were so many people, but I'm going to throw out a couple thank yous that I remember at least. And before I get started, I should just say that this is going to be kind of a long housekeeping. I mean, we have these thank yous, but then just a ton of life updates, and it's the new season, it's all that crap. But if you hate hearing about stuff that isn't just the stories, as always, chapters are in the description of this episode, so you can hop ahead, probably 10 minutes from now or whatever to when we're starting the actual episode. But we do have some housekeeping this episode. So like I was saying, the first leg was Pittsburgh. Huge thank you to Grace and Jonah for taking me around the city to museums and to food and stuff, and to Doug Edgel, not sure how to say his name, who had a bunch of recommendations, and I wanted to go see him play music but couldn't make it. And then I believe her name on Facebook's Mim, but I think in real life it's Michelle, who invited me to the pet funeral home where she works, which I stopped by at. And then on the Indianapolis leg, big thanks to Katie for a bunch of recs who we actually met at Monster Fest, and Daniel, Mr. Chocolate Bar himself from Monster Fest.
Oh, big up, Stan.
Yeah, who came up with a huge recommendation with Sun King Brewery, which was really, really good. And it was an awesome place to work, too. Like, I did a bunch of editing there. And then Hannah for a bunch of recs in Indianapolis and Omaha. I went to the Kurt Vonnegut Museum based on her recommendation, which was super interesting. And a bar that she recommended I went to later in Omaha. Next was the Milwaukee leg. Big thanks to Tammy and Allie for recommending great places for Friday Fish Fry. And Megan for making sure that I got a brandy old fashioned while I was there, which is, I thought would be grosser than it was. Yeah. But it was good. It was fine. I guess that's like a Milwaukee thing. Allison for the fantastic Ron's 5x5 wreck in Kenosha. I'm actually using a Ron's coaster right now. And Tyler for Lakefront Brewery wreck, which was a really, really great spot. And I got cheese curds and I was very happy. Next, and well, last, because I kind of had to reroute after this. But the Iowa Omaha leg, thanks to Jenny for recommending the Iowa Tap Room in Des Moines, which was a great place to stop for lunch on the drive. And to Leah and Alicia for, and maybe more people, I think, for the recommendation of the Old Market, I guess, area of Omaha, which was great. It was like a really fun, great little area to walk through and stuff. But especially to Graceland for showing me around Old Market, and then also out for drinks, which was like just super fun. It was great. We had a really fun time. Like Omaha was definitely a vibe. Maybe not in the winter, but it was good when I was there. So yeah, per always, driving across America rules, and driving in LA is an absolute fucking bust.
Absolutely, because I think we have a update that I think a good number of people who listen to the show know what happened to Ed in his car in Los Angeles.
Not on the road trip, not any of the number of times I've driven across the country, just like doing a normal Sunday night drive home from the same place I'm at pretty much every Sunday.
In the right lane.
Slow lane, baby.
He was living life in the slow lane, cruising at a normal speed, being a normal guy, when he got creamed by a big white truck and his car got... Well, Ed, you can tell the story. You were there.
Yeah, I was driving in the slow lane, minding my own fucking business, and some, I guess, Corvette or something. I couldn't see that side of the road. I'm told a Corvette was racing or being an idiot or bounced off another wall. It either hit this white truck to the left of me or just scared the white truck to the left of me, and the white truck to the left of me just like jammed his wheel to the right directly into the side of my car just on the highway and pushed me into the wall of the highway. Like, this barely has a breakdown lane, this highway. And so I hit that wall. The car that was following too close behind me slams into the back of me. So now I'm like spinning further down the highway. There's like other vehicles ahead that are like in the wall too now. So this Corvette caused a bunch of havoc and then actually fled the scene. I think they just like sideswiped or scared people. So they were good to go. But yeah, it sucked. It was like almost midnight. Car was totaled. Airbags everywhere. I got pretty injured, like different parts of my body, which, as you know, which is so nuts. Like you were around this past, we did a live show like less than 24 hours later where I was like barely got through it.
Yeah.
But then as the week went on, like you were there, like new bruises arrive and like new issues arrive. So like 24 hours later was not as bad as weirdly like 48 hours, 72 hours later. Shit got worse. And if it wasn't for my friends Brandy and Josh and Mo, who picked me up from the highway and took me to the hospital and were with me until 4 a.m. That night and really took care of me, I'd probably still be on the fucking highway. Like right now, picking up scared all the time cards and stuff that scattered everywhere. So can't thank them enough. Fucking best friends you can ask for real.
Yeah.
And then it just slowed us down. We had insurance people. I'm still looking for a car. Everything's so fucking expensive for no reason. And it's just been, it's just like it really slowed us down. We had to miss some deadlines on this show. Yeah. You know, we have to change calendars for the advertising people and stuff. So,
hey, speaking of advertising, if you run a used car dealership and you want us to run a free ad for you on this show, hook that up. Hook that up with a
little truck.
But part of what's so crazy about this accident that Ed got in is you're about to listen to an episode, as you already know from clicking on it, called Sudden Death, that is all about things that can come out of nowhere and kill you before you even know what's happening. And then like a few hours after we recorded this episode, Ed got in this wreck. So everything that you're about to hear Ed say about car accidents happened about 3 hours before he got in this big car accident that almost took him out in the blink of an eye. So
and it really was the blink of an eye. Like it was, I explained this to people. It was like a slide projector. It was like the first slide, I was on the highway. There was no cars in front of me. It was perfectly normal listening to an audiobook. And then the next slide of the slide projector was all the airbags going off. I'm in the wall. All this. It was so sudden.
Yeah.
I did not see it coming at all. Yeah.
Yeah. All the details Ed just shared are details that he's picked up from the police and insurance and whatever after the fact. In the moment, it was just like blink and he's in the wall.
I mean, I remember seeing that white truck.
Yes.
I remember seeing it to my left, but I never saw, like, the airbags and stuff went off immediately. So,
Right.
you know, all that shit took up my time, obviously. But it's just some stuff taking up your time. You're in the middle of a move because of big-time news.
Yes, there is a Cullari baby on the way.
Ew, gross, boo.
It whines, it cries, it poops a lot. It brings my name and bloodline into the future. Yes, my wife and I are going to have a baby in February. We found out in, I think, maybe the middle of last season, but we didn't want to say anything until it was like through the first trimester. So, yeah, we're having a baby, and then that prompted a move to Pasadena, and that took up a lot of time, partially because we completely by accident and through random chance ended up moving on the hottest day of the year so far. In September, it was 112 degrees or something.
My rental car said that, yeah.
The day that we moved. So the burly Russian movers that we had, I've never used movers before, but we got movers, and thank God we got movers because it would have been impossible without them. But there was an older guy of the two who looked real bad, and he didn't speak English. The other mover had to translate. I'd be like, is he okay? Does he need water? and then he'd turn and like translate into Russian, and the guy would just sort of indicate no, but everything else about his body indicated yes. So, including his like half closed eyes, his drenched in sweat, his like wobbling movements.
Yeah.
So it was a whole thing, and then, you know, just one thing after another with that, and then moving into the place that we're in, which is awesome, and I love it, but just a lot of organization. We couldn't bring a lot of our furniture with us just because the rooms are kind of differently shaped in this apartment, so some of our stuff didn't fit. So anyway, it's been a whole thing, and then, you know, Ed and I have been writing this season and recording this season and dealing with the accident, and it's been crazy, but all the messages we've gotten from you guys, both of support for Ed when he was in his accident and just in general, we've still been in touch with a lot of you about, you know, how much you like the show and how much you're looking forward to the next season. So that's really been keeping us going.
And the grace you've all shown of take your time.
Yeah.
Get better and don't rush. I mean, we're going as fast as we can still.
It's more grace than we show ourselves.
Yeah.
We crack the whip on each other. But yeah, thank you guys very much for that.
And we're back.
We're back. We've got some really great episodes lined up. We've got some fun Halloween stuff lined up. And yeah, it's going to be the best season of this show yet. So buckle up, get ready, and here we go with Sudden Death. I often joke that my last words will be, oops. And I wonder how many people have gone out that way. Not paying enough attention, placing their foot on the wrong part of the stairs, slipping on some ice, getting too close to heavy machinery, that kind of thing. Some of you who've been listening for a while might remember a few months ago when I almost lost my eye to a toilet water and shit-covered wire hanger, and that was a big oops moment for me. It wouldn't have killed me, but it was a reminder how suddenly something catastrophic can happen. There's a really horrible video I saw online that you, and I need to emphasize here, I am not kidding, you should not ever go looking for. But there is a video where this guy accidentally gets his sleeve stuck in some sort of like huge machine lathe, and he realizes that he's stuck like a second before the thing turns on, and he has just enough time to panic and try to pull his arm out before he gets fully sucked in and shredded to pieces. And then there's just this one big slab of meat like slapping around and spraying blood. It's horrific and very sudden.
That's disgusting. And they had to put up 0 on the days without incident fucking sign.
I know, and
which is always a bummer.
Someone had to clean that up too, that'll stick with you. But I bring it up because it was such a definition of an oops kind of death, which makes me wonder, Ed, have you ever dodged an oops?
Yeah. I don't have anything specific right now, but I'm sure a million times. Obviously, anyone who's ever stepped on the rake of life, you know?
Yeah. Well, sometimes I think stepping on the rake of life sounds like a Hose Boys hit waiting to happen.
Yeah, true.
I think sometimes probably the worst near oopses are ones that we didn't even realize almost happened.
Yeah, my first car wreck, kind of the only real wreck I was in, I was like 16. It was so sudden, and it was just so crazy. It was nothing to cars destroyed on the side of the road like in a second.
Yeah.
And I was completely fine. Like the airbag didn't go off, nothing. I had not a single injury of any kind.
Wow.
It was miraculous, but it was beyond sudden. It was like no knowledge it was going to happen, then it happened. So that's kind of I think that's the closest. And it was, I remember I was listening to Jimmy Eat World, The Sweetness, and I still have a hard time listening to that song in cars because it's like great fucking track, but like a shit memory associated with it.
Yeah. I also sometimes have trouble, not the Sweetness, but the opening track off that record, Bleed American, is the last song I listened to before 9/11. I remember I listened to it on the bus that morning, and I've always had a weird reaction to that song ever since. Yeah, I've had a couple of near accidents while driving.
This wasn't a near accident. This was a full-blown accident.
well, that's you had a full-blown accident, but I don't know if that would really count as an oops because you were paying attention. It just sort of happened.
No, I'm pretty sure I caused it. I don't want to get into how it happened exactly, but
so you were changing the song to The Sweetness when you looked up.
I'm just saying that it was in an instant. It was in an instant.
Mm-hmm.
In case you skipped housekeeping, mere hours after this recording, Ed would go on to have an even bigger and scarier wreck that was patently not his fault. The synchronicity around it was next level. More on that synchronicity in the next episode.
All right, fair enough. Well, most of the near oopses I wonder about are the times that I probably don't even remember. Like, you know, I probably fell out of a tree as a kid and like just missed breaking my neck, but didn't.
Oh, speaking of breaking my neck, that happened to me too. By the way, if any higher being is saving me for something, it's yet to reveal what that is.
Yeah.
But I also, I broke my neck playing lacrosse. I'm sure you know. Fractured some vertebrae. And I remember the doctor said that if this was again, I love anyone who uses like the weirdest measurements, but he was like, if this was a dime's width one way or the other or whatever it was, you'd be paralyzed.
I don't know. I must have, because you've told me that lacrosse story, so I must have told you this story at some point, but I played lacrosse for 1 year, my sophomore year of high school or my freshman year. I don't remember, one of the two. And I was terrible at it. Our coaches had been coaching rec lacrosse with all the same guys who were seniors, and then it became an official school sport. So everyone knew how to play, and they didn't bother teaching any of the younger kids how to play lacrosse. Like, a lot of the kids were just people's younger brothers and stuff. So none of us knew what we were doing, really, or at least I didn't. Maybe everyone else did. But I remember we were going up against this one team that was like made up of a lot of football players who also played lacrosse, and they were notoriously tough.
Different seasons, yeah.
And the coach, I think as like a goof, put me in to take the face off. Like, you both crouch down over the ball at the beginning of the quarter round or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, okay, sure. You didn't really learn a lot during that time period, but yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and so I remember, well, the last thing I remember is taking the face off. And then the next thing I remember is standing like kind of near the side of the field, and the ball had rolled out, and I didn't know what to do with it, and everybody was like yelling at me. So I picked it up and like threw it in with the lacrosse stick like you'd throw a soccer ball back into play, which is not what you do in lacrosse.
Yeah.
And then everybody like yelled at me some more. And then my friend's dad ran over, who was a doctor, and he started like looking at my eyes, and I had no idea what was going on. All I knew was that my hands weren't really working. Like I could barely hold the stick. And apparently I'd taken the face off. The guy hit me so hard that I like went over his back and landed on my head. And then, got up, which I don't remember, and ran to get the ball like I knew what I was doing. And they were like worried that I had a concussion and stuff. And so I think back on that because that was like I probably could have, if I'd landed a little differently, broken my neck or something. Like, that was probably a close one.
Yeah, the neck is such a weird thing because it's like, I'll watch a movie and someone snaps someone's neck in movies all the time. And I'm like, there's no way that's that easy. Like, I feel like we're very durable. We're very, you know what I mean? Like, surprisingly durable species.
Yeah.
And then some shit like that happens where it's like, oh, just some 17-year-old hit you and you almost end up wheelchair bound rest of your life. It's like, oh, maybe we're not that durable. I don't know.
Yeah, we can be. Yeah, the human body is a miracle and a curse. But So, yes, you and I have both probably dodged death a couple of times. Like you said, most people have probably dodged death a lot, knowing it or not knowing it. And one of the reasons I find this idea of sudden death so frightening is that, like, we're going to get philosophical real quick in this episode. So puff, puff, pass, light up that 420, my friends. One of the reasons I find sudden death so frightening is that the awareness of our death gives us a chance to think about the past and put our life into context. And I think that's what people mean when they talk about having a good death, that you want to have a good death. You want to go out surrounded by family. Because the thought that keeps me up at night is that you can't experience death. You can experience dying, but you can't experience death. And what I mean by that is, if death is the same state of non-being, of nothingness, that comes before being born, you can't comprehend it and you can't remember it. There's nothing to know because there is no you. And that's the state you return to when you die. So if you die a sudden death, like someone sneaks up and shoots you in the back of the head, you immediately become nothing.
Yeah, we've discussed this on the show before. This exact line of argument.
Well, because it fucking scares me because...
No, I know. I'm saying is, it's, you could finish it, people who haven't heard that episode, or if they're listening backwards. But, but I mean, I'm just saying that this has come up on the show before. We've gotten this level of philosophical before on the show. And I think I might have mentioned this last time, and if I didn't, I'll bring it up now. It's interesting that you say that you return to this nothingness. If you ask someone, do you want to live for 1,000 years? They might say yes. But if you say, hey, but every 100 years you reset your memories, people usually then say, you know what, 100 years is more than enough. It's like without the memories of a life lived, extending that life is not interesting anymore.
Right.
And I don't mean reincarnation. They'll tell you, like, right now, it's still going to be you. You're still going to be Chris Cullari. You're still going to be in this body, whatever. But people go, oh, when I lose my identity of a life lived, then who gives a shit anymore? So it's less about the ability to live long and more about the ability to experience a long life.
Well, and to know that you're experiencing a long life, which requires memory. Right. Because if you die suddenly, to you, it's like you never existed at all.
Exactly.
Everything is wiped clean before you get a chance to know that there's anything happening. You know, like if you were President Kennedy riding in that limo in Dallas, 1 minute you're president of the United States on top of the world, and the next minute you're just gone. Like, not a single campaign you ran, not a person you met, not a bill you passed, not a starlet that you fucked.
None of that.
None of that matters.
And even if you went to heaven or hell or anything that someone might believe in after, the best case scenario is you're either punished for the things that you just mentioned, or rewarded for those things, and maybe they let you watch it back on a projector or something, kind of like a defending your life, but not even defending your life, just like, oh, I can watch the highlight reels, but still, whatever this new space might be that you're in, you can't affect what you left, so it's still a little bit like, oh, I've been extradited or deported. I'm like, I've been deported and I can never go back. So even if you enter the next plane of existence with your memories and your shit, it's still kind of a bummer. I guess, yeah, you can see everyone you ever knew again, but how many people do any of us really know? Well, like, you're still, I guess, making friends in heaven, right? You're still just like, oh, hey, what's up? I'm new here.
Actually, that's interesting. That's not something I've ever really thought about before, but the idea of an afterlife is really only appealing if you bring your memories with you. If you don't bring your memories with you, then
starting over again anyway.
Then you're starting over again anyway.
You're starting in a new high school, you know? And think about any family who's ever had to move when a kid's like a sophomore in high school. The kid loses their fucking mind over it. They're like, all my friends are here.
And you wouldn't, the seeing people you loved only matters if you have memories of loving them. Otherwise, they're just strangers who are like, hi, I love you.
Or people you're like, fuck, I thought I'd never see you again. Now I'm stuck here with you. How the fuck did you get into heaven?
Well, yeah, I guess, oh my God. If you go to heaven without your memories, it is basically hell, because you essentially have Alzheimer's, because you're surrounded by people who are like, I love you. And you're like, who are these people?
Yeah, I mean, well, if they remember you, then that means you get memories when you go in. It's more, for me, it's just about, like, I feel like I had my fill of you in round one.
Right.
Can I go? Is there a bar I can go to and meet new people? And so really, even if you go to heaven by this virtue of what we're talking about, this version of heaven, Yeah, it's still like moving to a new town.
Right.
And making friends as an adult is like some of the hardest work you can do.
Oh, tell me about it. Well, I should clarify here too. When I say that once you die, you might as well have never existed. Again, I'm speaking about to you. I'm not saying that means you should be a total shit-stained cynic your whole life because nothing matters. Like, we are still shaping and changing the world around us, hopefully for the better most days. We will be remembered by the people we bonded with and affected after we die. But a sudden death makes your life very unfortunate because you don't remember that you lived.
But if I have to sudden die,
yeah,
I would like a sudden death that's pretty cut and dry. I would like a sudden death where it's like Ed was hit by a train.
Right.
Not, Ed, and this is, a trigger warning for some people who have this in their life, I guess. But just not waking up.
Right.
And people don't know why you died, or it's inconclusive, or there wasn't clearly drugs in your system.
Right.
Or whatever. Like, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
And it might be a good way to die, where it's like, I went to sleep and didn't wake up, but it's a really inconvenient death for people around you. Because I don't include suicide as a sudden death. That's premeditated. So
sure.
I mean, like, something where it's like, I don't even mean a suicide, but there's no. I mean, genuinely a mysterious death is not a sudden death I'm as into.
Well, and we don't even know. We are going to do a whole episode eventually on dying in your sleep, because one of my other greatest fears is that everybody always is like, oh, it's so peaceful, they pass in their sleep. No, they might have died screaming that they don't want to die while they're asleep, and just no one knew because they were asleep. Like, just because they didn't wake up doesn't mean that it was quiet and peaceful. But anyway,
that's just you're transferring your Freddy Krueger issues onto onto regular people. We'll cross that bridge when we get to that episode.
We will, because one of the things is actually a good transition, because one of the things I want to talk about is the first thing before we dive into this. I love my definitions. I love context. So what does it actually mean to die instantaneously? Well, I'm glad you asked, because it's not as straightforward as it might seem. To answer this question, I turned to Google, which directed me to a column on thestraightdope.com.
You love that site, baby. We're always going there.
I've never been to thestraightdope.com.
Oh, maybe it was a dream I had that I was screaming and couldn't wake up from.
Well, you may have heard of this site before, because I thought I almost didn't even use it, because I was like, oh, this just seems like it's probably a bad Onion ripoff. Apparently, The Straight Dope is a question and answer column that's been running in the Chicago area papers since 1973. So it is a pretty valid source. It's a real thing. Anyone, I guess, in the Chicago area has probably heard of this. I hadn't. But so the question written into The Straight Dope is this: Dear Straight Dope, when news organizations report on tragic accidents, they sometimes say the victims were, quote, killed instantly. What exactly does this mean? My friend tells me that it implies beheading, but this causes me to wonder about two things. One, aren't there other things that could happen besides beheading that could kill a person instantly? And two, even if one were beheaded, couldn't consciousness be maintained for a little while, perhaps 30 seconds? Greg in Colorado. Well, my answer to Greg in Colorado is, who the fuck are you hanging out with who's like so insistent about beheadings?
I mean, anyone watching the news from
who
fucking 2001 to 2016?
Sure, but who thinks that being killed instantly is like newspaper code implying a beheading? Unless you're always thinking about beheadings.
It's like newspaper code for like PR couples. It was like seen deeply in love or whatever. Like, is like code for like a PR company set up that celebrity couple.
I just love that this guy's friend is walking around the world thinking that thousands of people a year are beheaded. I mean, they are, I guess, but not necessarily every article that you read.
Sure.
Anyway, The Straight Dope answers as such. The main problem in determining what counts as instant death is that the moment of death is not always precise, which we've talked about if you listen to Buried Alive, where we're learning more and more about what death actually is and means all the time. So it makes defining that moment of death even trickier. The answer continues, though. Some mechanisms of death cause a rapid loss of consciousness, so the person would feel no pain, but actual physiological death may take a few minutes. For example, your friend's suggestion of decapitation would cause a rapid loss of consciousness, but the heart may beat for a few seconds or more before blood loss causes arrest. This is, I imagine, this is just me saying, that's probably why we have so many stories of people's bodies or heads still moving around after they've been separated from one another.
Oh, I'm sure there's all sorts of shit going on in the body.
Yeah.
Like, what is the body?
What is the body?
But I'm saying, what is the body? Because, it's a suit of the shittiest armor. Because we're not even, like, our skeleton is deep. Like, we're just brains, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're just brains. We're just brains.
We're just brains.
And so if the head's beheaded, if you get a Highlander or whatever, like, it's still like your body is still, as far as anyone's concerned, like your being is still completely intact because the brain is still there. It's just lacks the fluid pumping from the other more important organs and the undercarriage of the body of your being.
Right.
Yeah. If you just forget about the fact that like we're just brains.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. We're brains walking around in brain suits.
I wonder, how people get phantom limb syndrome, like if they lose an arm in an explosion, sometimes they'll still feel the arm or it'll tingle or whatever.
Yeah.
I wonder if you get beheaded if you have phantom body syndrome.
For a second.
Where you're like, you still feel your whole body, but you're looking at your body and you're like, whoa, wait a second.
No, yeah, that's the
not where I should be.
Cartoon running off a cliff until they look down, they don't actually fall.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
I think about this, and we'll move on from this if it even stays in the episode. But I think one of the most terrifying sights in terms of like having a visceral reaction to it is like in RoboCop, where he like sees himself with like what's actually left of him, and you're just like, that's so fucking gross and scary. And in the idea that again we are just these fucking brains, that life is just easier when we have these bodies attached to them, but you can just be a head probably and live.
Yeah, lots of 1950s sci-fi has the brain in a jar situation.
Exactly. I hate it. Sorry, moving on.
Well, we're going to get to a little more of that in a bit. But anyway, the article, in this case, in defining instant death, continues. Perhaps the best definition to use for instant death is any event that causes an immediate and permanent cessation of vital function, allowing for the slower process of cellular death. In layman's terms, a quick and massive incident. For example, having your chest blown away by mortar fire, decapitation, getting hit by a speeding bus, getting a piano dropped on your head, or any other severe crushing injury to the head and or chest would all qualify.
So we have war, a simple not look the right way situation, and a cartoon piano/anvil fall are the three options they give. I will say this, it can't just be movies from the silent era and cartoons. Like, there must have been like an epidemic of pianos falling in major cities while they tried to like crane them into high floor apartments, because that shit was like ever present in the 1920s and 30s and like in media.
Probably. I mean, people in like New York City had pianos on like the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 10th floor or whatever. So, I mean, some of them probably fell. Just statistically, you got to assume some of those pianos. Now, anvils suspended by structurally unsound ropes seem rare even in the 1920s.
I don't even know what that was. That just like machines started doing the job of blacksmiths, and they're like, we don't even have need for these anvils anymore. I guess put them in all these 14th floor anvil museums.
Let's store them on the tops of buildings.
Yeah, some hipster wants an anvil in their 15th floor apartment.
Yeah.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Well, the good news is that all of those ways of sudden instant death makes me feel pretty good, because it seems like most of the ways to experience a true instant death, including being assassinated by one or more CIA agents in Dallas, are pretty rare. I feel like I can avoid most of this stuff. I'm not walking under pianos. I haven't and don't plan to be shot at by a rocket launcher. Well, I don't plan on running for president.
We're too old for the draft now, so yeah, we're good.
I'm too old for the draft now, baby. Let's say I'm right, and I successfully avoid these extreme disaster situations. Do I still have to worry about dropping dead instantaneously? Are there natural causes that can take you out before you know what's happening? Of course, because this wouldn't be much of an episode if there weren't. According to an article on theconversation.com, quote, "The sudden death of a previously healthy young individual is a rare but tragic event. Every year, about 1 in 100,000 people aged between 1 and 35 dies suddenly of a natural cause. Which, Ed, congratulations, it means we have aged out of the period when this is considered an unforeseeable tragedy."
Oh, good. At least statistically.
Statistically. If either of us drop dead, legally, they can't say it was too soon.
Yeah, that's true.
So the natural cause that scares me the most that can kill you instantaneously is a brain aneurysm. I don't know anyone who's died this way. I don't think anyone in my family has a history of this.
I think it's one of the first things they check in an autopsy. I think it's like a heart thing and an aneurysm are the first things they like rule out in terms of when they're trying to find out when someone dies and it's not like obvious.
Yeah.
I think an aneurysm is like one of the first things they check for.
The idea of something going catastrophically wrong in my head is pretty much the worst thing I can think of, which leads me to a quick detour about head trauma, because even though, I mean, head trauma probably could be its own episode.
Well, should we go to our sponsor, the NFL, first before we do
it? This weekend, only on ESPN2. Yes, please. That would be great. No, stories of people with severe head trauma who live for a few seconds to hours not realizing that anything's wrong is, whether it's in a movie or a newspaper, one of the absolute worst thing I could think of. Like, the most brutal deaths in movies to me aren't the ones where someone gets like ripped in half and all their guts fall out. It's the kind where someone like gets their head smashed in and like says something that suggests they don't know anything is wrong, or the body keeps trying to live but it can't.
Or that really weird death in Signs, one of my all-time favorite movies, where it's like, if we move the car, you'll die, but like as long as the car keeps you pinned to the tree, you're fine. It was like the weirdest. I never Googled if that's a real thing that can happen, but it is unusual choice. But I think that's exactly what you're talking about. But you're probably thinking of it in a more sad way.
Yeah.
Where this is, I guess, a happy-ish moment. But
well, is it head trauma in Signs?
No, she's cut in half by a fucking car. I don't want to give anything away. It is a fucking spoiler.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, I was trying to come up with Michael Biehn in Tombstone goes out that way. He gets shot in the head and like his body starts twitching and he's like trying to reach for his gun before he falls over. I think it happened in The Walking Dead at some point to one character because I saw a clip of it and I was like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that happens. I see. You see it a lot where it's like they don't know.
Oh my God. When we were in college, I got a call one night. I was like editing something in the middle of the night in the like editing building.
Yeah, that's where I used to work. Yeah.
And I got a call that this girl I went to high school with died in a car crash and that she was in the back seat. Her friends had driven off the road. There was something, I don't know if it was a car or a deer or what. They hit a barn, and then the girl I knew who was in the back seat hit her head and then told people she was fine for like a minute or two and then just started vomiting and died. And like, that is unbelievably scary to me.
Well, I don't know about this. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into it potentially, or I'm not sure, but like, is there, I feel like there's reason to believe in my mind that like the human body's equipped with some sort of like sterilization of truly insane things, where like if all of a sudden if a buzzsaw like cut your arm off from nothing that like I think the human body might just be like a nerve delayed reaction to like make, I don't know why, just in my mind it's cool that would exist. Yeah, it's gonna hurt, but that thing where it's like, oh, I didn't even know I had a knife in my side for a minute and a half.
Yeah.
Not because I have a neurological brain trauma, it's just because for whatever reason it's a delayed response.
Well, you definitely are onto something, because the story that I wanted to tell in this section is the story of this man named Peter Porco, who was attacked by his son in 2004.
Yeah, which alternate dimension Spider-Man is this?
Yeah. It's the alternate dimension where he's a 300-pound lawyer or something. I forget if he's like a lawyer.
This guy we're talking about was a lawyer?
Peter Porco. He was like a lawyer and accountant or something like that.
So he's a 300-pound accountant.
Giant guy named Peter Porco, which is very funny, and no one should have. It's an unfortunate combination of look and name, but he experienced one of the worst deaths I've ever heard. His son, Chris, not all Chris's, was in a bunch of debt and started forging his parents' signatures on loan documents. And a few weeks after Peter, his dad, confronted him, Chris went to their house where his parents lived, disabled the alarms, and attacked his dad and his mom, Joan, with an axe. Joan survived and said her son did it in the immediate aftermath, though her memory eventually failed, and she later swore it wasn't him, going so far as to letting him live in the house he tried to kill her in during the trial.
Wow.
But Peter is the fucking whoo. So he was struck 16 times in the face with an axe.
What?
His head and face were split open, but he didn't die. He was asleep when this happened.
Oh, what a fucking little bitch his son is.
Yeah. So
starting when people are asleep, that's fucking lame, dude.
When Peter woke up in the morning, the part of his brain that registers pain and injury was so badly damaged that he just got up and went about his day. The blood stains in the house, footprints, and other physical evidence shows that Peter woke up, brushed his teeth, used the toilet, got dressed, made breakfast, washed the dishes, walked outside for the morning paper, realized he'd locked himself out, so he went and got a spare key, and then promptly died from blood loss right there on the patio or something.
I have questions immediately.
He died without realizing anything was wrong.
No, here's the thing I don't believe about the story, which is it would have to either be the fucking first hit that took out his pain center of his brain, or the last hit.
Yeah.
Oh, God. So it's the not waking up aspect that makes it hard to believe, because unless it's the first hit that also knocked you out, I don't know how you do that. Secondly, have you ever met a human being who wasn't on the fucking battlefield who brushed their teeth without a mirror?
No, there was a mirror. They're pretty sure that he looked in the mirror and his brain just didn't register that his face was hanging off.
So basically, he got hit 16 times. In all 16 times, took out a different important part of his brain function that led to... This is crazy.
Yeah.
And this is so crazy that... It's made up.
It's not.
Do you understand?
You understand me? You understand me? No,
this
it's
is
not
fucking made up.
I mean, they basically. I mean, look, no one was there, so they don't know. No one, and I don't know that there's any like security camera footage of any of it. From what I've read, it seems like they basically pieced this together from the blood splatter evidence.
They pieced this together with a fucking Mad Libs. There's no version that they got to this conclusion.
They called him a
liar. They called him a liar.
He's been
a dead liar.
He's been called one of the only true zombies, because if you'd seen him, he would have looked like a zombie with his skull and skin and brains hanging out, just doing stuff and not recognizing that he was dead or dying.
I mean, that's all of us, though. I mean, that sentence can be used for literally all of us. Just doing stuff without recognizing that we're dying.
Yeah. I mean, we're barely a year into this show, and I feel like if you hit me in the head with an axe, I'd still be like, hey, you send the link for the show yet? We got to get going.
Yeah, there's a lot in our lives that is rote, yeah.
Anyway, I'm not so worried about my brain getting damaged in an axe attack. I'm more worried about my brain getting damaged by my own body, which is where my fear of brain aneurysms comes in. So according to the Mayo Clinic, a brain aneurysm is, quote, a bulge or ballooning in a blood vessel in the brain. An aneurysm often looks like a berry hanging on a stem. Experts think brain aneurysms form and grow because blood flowing through the blood vessel puts pressure on a weak area of the vessel wall. This can increase the size of the brain aneurysm, and if the brain aneurysm leaks or ruptures, it causes bleeding in the brain, known as hemorrhagic stroke. And that's the part that actually kills you, which is sort of a comforting fact because I didn't really know this. I guess I didn't know enough about brain aneurysms, but so the aneurysm can burst without warning, but they don't actually come out of nowhere. Lots of people have small, unbroken aneurysms. Like, aneurysm is the noun.
Like, aneurysm is the berry on the branch.
Yes. So lots of people have them.
So you might have little berries on your branches right now.
Yeah. Little berries on your branches. I'm picturing Homer Simpson hearing this and like tasting them. And they do, a small unbroken aneurysm does often produce symptoms ranging from double vision or blurry vision to droopy eyelids, dilated pupils, weaknesses, or pain behind an eye. So if you're listening to this and you have one of those symptoms, maybe visit a doctor, see if they can find anything lurking in your brain. And if they do, that's actually good news. It means that you and your doctor could keep an eye on the aneurysms to make sure they don't become dangerous, just like a cancer or anything else. I was, the other night, Ed, you know, I think the listeners know, but if they don't, they do now. I watch a lot of 90 Day Fiancé.
Yeah,
I love that. It's my reality addiction.
Sure.
And there's this woman on the season of 90 Day the Other Way where Americans go overseas to pursue relationships. Doesn't matter. But she talks about how doctors discovered 40 aneurysms in her brain, and she had to have surgery to get them all removed.
That's so many.
That's so many.
Like, at that point, the inside of your body is burst pipes held together with duct tape.
It looks like Captain Crunch oops all berries in your fucking head. At that point.
They knew what they were doing. That's marketing. It was not actually an oops. They knew they were making that cereal. Mm-hmm. But yes, no, that's some of the weakest veins I can think of at this point. Like, every one of them's on the verge of being like, this, we're done.
Yeah. So my point is, while it's probably scary to know that you have a bunch of aneurysms dangling in your brain, it's even scarier to not know that you have aneurysms in your head, because that's when shit can really go wrong. Because if an undetected aneurysm bursts, the first sign that something's wrong is a sudden, extremely severe headache. And once that headache sets in, the clock is ticking. Aneurysms are fatal for approximately 50% of people within 3 months of the hemorrhage happening. And nearly 1/4 of those people die within the first 24 hours.
Oh my God.
I couldn't find how many people die immediately, but as we'll talk about in a little bit, there's quite a number of them.
But how do you search for? Is it an MRI? Is it just looking in your eyeball with a light? Like, are they easily detectable? I'm saying, like, I mean, they found this lady got 40 berries on her head.
Yes.
I'm saying, like,
so
once one
do
pops, is there a way to be like, okay, it's a 5-minute procedure to confirm it?
Well, so a lot of them pre-bursting are found during routine scans for other stuff. So yeah, they show up on MRIs, they show up in other like brain tests, anything where they're imaging your brain. That's how they'll often find them. Once they burst, I don't know what the process is. I imagine maybe an MRI, but if they think it's an aneurysm that burst, you don't have time to get an MRI. Like, yeah,
I mean, and well, that's especially in this country, it's going to be like, yeah, it's 17 weeks before you can get an MRI. Even knowing they're always like, people who complain about, universal health care are always like, you could go to Canada, it'd be 6 months to get a doctor.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, you ever try and make any procedure that isn't a physical in this country? It's like,
yeah, forget
15 weeks. It's bullshit.
Yeah. Anyway, as someone who has dealt with sudden severe headaches since I was a kid, it could be a real anxiety inducer to wonder if and when one of these headaches is something more serious. I know a story that really got under my skin was in like 2013 or 15. There was some article I read online about a woman who was working in a newsroom. She was in good health, in her like 20s or 30s. And one day she suddenly stood up at her desk and said, something's wrong. And then moments later dropped dead. And it was an aneurysm. No one could do anything about it. And I read this, unfortunately, during a very, very, very stressful time in my life. I was going through a breakup. I'd just gotten my first major deal, and I had an office at Blumhouse. And I was at work there, I'll never forget this, on my laptop, reading a review of the Johnny Depp movie Black Mass, when I thought I heard a popping sound in my head.
Whoa.
And I had this sudden, clear sense that this was an aneurysm, and I had maybe seconds to live. I told my writing partner, who was sitting at the desk across from me, that I thought something was really wrong and that I might die. I didn't want to I didn't want to scare her, because I didn't want her to, I didn't know what to do, but I was very worried. And I laugh about it now, but at the time, I genuinely thought I had 30 seconds to a minute maybe to live.
Was there any pain associated with the pop?
No. So at this point, I hadn't done research on aneurysms. I had read this story about this girl who stood up and said something's wrong and died. And I knew that aneurysms were a thing, but I knew nothing else about them. So there was no pain, but I was so freaked out that I called my mom and said the same thing. I was like, I don't think I'm dying, but I might be dying. I don't know what's going on. I was freaking out. What did
she?
Out.
Well, yeah, I mean, she doesn't give a shit. Did she care?
She was like, she wasn't too worried because I was calling. You know, I had the wherewithal to call.
Chris, are you on drugs? Why are you calling with this crazy bad trip energy?
It wasn't an aneurysm, or I don't know. I didn't have health insurance at the time, so I didn't get it checked out. But I'm still here, and there was no pain, so I assume it wasn't. I had waves of panic attacks after the fact, and I couldn't sleep because I thought I wouldn't wake up. Every time the sun went behind a cloud and the light changed, I would be like, I'm dying. It was bad. I also, though, in hindsight, I'm pretty sure this was all caused by my terrible coffee habits. There was a very nice espresso machine in the Blumhouse kitchen, and during the day, I would idly walk around while I was thinking about whatever I was writing at the time, and I'd usually end up making an espresso basically on autopilot, a real Phil Porco move.
Yeah.
Or Peter Porco, whatever.
Oh, yeah, Peter Porco.
And the day I freaked out, I'm pretty sure I'd had 4 or 5 espressos in as many hours. And so I'm pretty sure what happened was I just had a massive panic attack between the stress and the espresso. But yeah, that was the day where I was like, aneurysms are the scariest thing in the world. Anyway, the good news for the 50% of people that do survive a ruptured aneurysm and experience the hemorrhagic stroke associated with it is that there is the possibility of recovery, though it is a tough, it's as difficult as any stroke recovery. And interestingly, I know we've already brought up dead presidents, but this I found in my research, hemorrhagic strokes as a result of aneurysm have killed not 1, but 2 U.S. presidents. FDR and John Quincy Adams both went out from aneurysms. FDR passed pretty quietly. He was in his study. His last words were, "I have a terrific pain in the back of my head."
Sure.
And then he died. Adams had about as dramatic a death as any president not named Kennedy or Lincoln could possibly have. According to an article on PBS.com, Adams, or Old Man Eloquent, as he was known to his peers, was at his desk in the Congress. He was in good spirits, and he'd signed autographs for some of the younger congressmen who revered him. And a few moments later, the House took up a resolution honoring the U.S. Army officers who served in the Mexican-American War. Adams was a longtime critic of the war, so he was loudly shouting no amid a swell of ayes from his peers.
Yeah, that sounds pretty eloquent.
Yeah.
Old man yells at Mexican-American cloud.
He rose from his seat to answer a question from the Speaker of the House, Robert C. Winthrop, but his body revolted. He staggered back to his desk, fell into the arms of the congressman sitting next to him, Ohio Representative David Fisher. He attempted to say a few words, but could not. A newspaper reporter high up in the press gallery described the former president's face as covered with a death-like pallor. Water streamed from his eyes and nose. So this motherfucker started melting like the senator from the first X-Men movie. It sounds like
Senator Kelly.
Yeah. He just started in the chambers. So other observers shouted for help. And there was at least one member who was a physician, Ohio Representative George Fries. He ran to Old Man Eloquent's side and said, "Stand back, give him some air, remove him from the chamber."
Do you want us to stand back or do you want us to remove him? We can't do both at the same time.
Representative Joseph Grinnell of Massachusetts secured a bucket of ice water and threw it on Adams's face, which may have been an attempt to resuscitate him, or Grinnell just was being a dick. Maybe they didn't like him.
Also, like, what is this, 18-something? 17-something? Quincy Adams.
18-something, yeah.
How fucking on the ready is any buckets of ice? Like, just ice in general must have been kind of hard to come by.
Yeah. He had suffered what was then known as an apoplectic fit and what doctors would today refer to as a cerebral hemorrhage or a massive stroke. This part gets me. Doctors, so here we have John Quincy Adams, old man eloquent, with a death-like pallor, streaming water from his eyes and nose or whatever, and then a nice guy or an asshole dumping ice water on his face. And then doctors rush to administer a battery of 19th century treatments ranging from mustard poultices to massive bloodletting and cupping on Adams's temples and the back of his neck.
Smoke enemas?
Maybe a smoke enema or two.
Probably a couple smoke enemas. Also,
Probably.
the guy who's suggesting bloodletting, are we just not acknowledging that the man on his own is letting a lot of blood? I don't think an additional blood loss is going to help here.
And the article is sure to mention massive bloodletting. So who knows? They just like cut his throat. They were like, yo, we got to get, this guy's got demons in his body. But this was interesting. I never knew this. So this is, again, according to PBS.com, there was no request to seek treatment in a hospital since those institutions were still primarily inhabited by the poor and incurables. Indeed, no one of means at that time would be caught dead in a hospital. So instead, he died in the halls of Congress, I guess.
Yeah, this is probably right in that pocket of our like waking up during surgery history stuff, where it was like there were doctors running ads in the newspaper that were like, "Don't go to this other doctor, you'll die." You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
there was like doctor smear campaigns. So yeah, I imagine that hospitals were last resorts.
Yeah, it's interesting. I never put two and two together on that, but I guess in the early days, hospitals really were just like, they were just hospice. It was just where you went to die.
Yeah.
And maybe they'd poke at you a little bit, but you probably weren't coming back.
Yeah.
Other famous people taken out by aneurysm and stroke include Cary Grant, Tom Sizemore, Gary Coleman, and Richard Burton. Although two of those guys, Sizemore and Burton, probably were making
drugs
it
and
way
alcohol
worse.
were maybe involved in that.
Yeah. But R.I.P. God bless to all of them.
R.I.P. God bless.
So even if you avoid bombs and bullets and catastrophic physical events,
Job in Hollywood.
yeah, or a job in Hollywood,
The presidency.
your brain can explode and take you out without warning. What else? Well, the bad news is that hemorrhagic strokes aren't even the most likely thing to suddenly kill you. Remember that statistic that called us old a few minutes ago, Ed?
Sure.
The one about how 1 in 100,000 people between 1 and 35 dies suddenly of a natural cause? Aneurysms aren't the number one cause of those deaths. Sudden arrhythmic death syndrome is.
So that sounds like heart stuff.
It is heart stuff.
Well, that's what I said, right? An
Yeah.
aneurysm and the heart are the two things they look at first to be like, well, what happened here?
Yeah. Sudden arrhythmic death syndrome, or SADS, as in help, I'm dying from a case of the SADS,
Sure.
is defined by MedicineNet as when the heart's electrical system malfunctions, resulting in cardiac dysfunction, and the heart is unable to pump blood to the vital organs of the body. The article goes on to say this mechanism can break down in a variety of ways, but the final pathway in sudden death is the same. The electrical system is irritated and fails to produce electrical activity that causes the heart to beat. The heart muscle can't supply blood to the body, particularly the brain, and the body dies. Ventricular fibrillation, VFib,
Sure.
is the most common reason for sudden death in patients. Without coordinated electrical signal, the bottom chambers of the heart, the ventricles, stop beating and instead jiggle like jello. Again, cue Homer going, This jiggling like jello is what's known as an arrhythmia, and if not treated, death can occur within minutes. The article ends by saying, less commonly, the heart can just stop beating.
Sure. Yeah.
So No additional information on that. Just the scariest sentence you've ever read with no context.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There are people dying out there that's like, we don't know. It seems like they've died. They gave up. What happened is the body gave up.
The heart said, mm-mm.
The heart said no more.
The heart quiet quit.
Yeah.
On you. Hilariously, this article also notes elsewhere that sudden death may be the first sign or symptom of heart disease. So
it's probably the last sign, it sounds like.
So no discovering aneurysms here. This is true, unpredictable, sudden death.
Yeah.
In 2008, there was a study that found that over half of SADS deaths could be attributed to inherited heart disease. Unexplained premature sudden deaths in family could be something called long QT syndrome, Brugada syndrome, arrhythmogenic right ventricular cardiomyopathy, and others.
Well, I imagine that if somebody dies in your family, for sure, of something that's like that, I think other people in the family might behoove them to be like, hey, this is weird.
Yeah.
Should I get checked out and have my brain or heart checked out and see if it's something that runs in the family, or we didn't have good records of my grandfather might have had it or my great-grandfather might have had it.
Yeah.
But I should probably pop in and maybe get a very specific physical.
Yeah, if anyone in your family going back, let's say 2 or 3 generations has just died, definitely go to the doctor and get a very specific physical. I was texting you when I was researching this because there's an Unsolved Mysteries episode about a family. I don't remember where in the U.S. they were. They were an immigrant family. They were like South Asian. And there were 4 or 5 of the people, like brothers, dads, whatever, that all just dropped dead. And they couldn't figure out what was happening. And I think the episode at the end brings up that it might be this sudden heart problem. But the reason that I couldn't find which episode that was is because the more famous version of that story is, we've talked about this, I think, in the Hat Man episode. There was a cluster in the late 70s and early 80s that killed a rash of South Asian men in their sleep.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that was what caused, or one of the inspirations for Nightmare on Elm Street. Wes Craven read an article about those deaths in the LA Times. And I don't want to talk too much about those because, like I said, we're going to do an episode on dying in your sleep someday. But every time I looked for Unsolved Mysteries, South Asian men dying suddenly, all I could find were things about the guys who died in their sleep. But there's also a lot of these men have died while they're awake.
Sure.
And no one's sure why, but it genuinely is. You know, there's a lot of myth and folklore in certain communities around this sort of sudden death, because there are particularly weirdly high instances of these disorders in South Asian men, and they do sometimes seem to strike in clusters. In 1948, there were 81 deaths of Filipino men in Oahu, Hawaii, that at the time weren't relevant because there wasn't an associated pattern. But as people have gone back and looked, they've been like, oh, there might have been like a heart disease cluster here that caused this.
Heart disease in terms of like you're born with it, or heart disease like the American South?
No.
Where it's like you're just eating buttery grits and biscuits every day.
Heart disease that like these guys all dropped dead and they may have all been suffering from Brugada syndrome or one of these other genetic diseases.
Okay, got you.
Anyway, the syndrome, whatever you want to call this sudden arrhythmic death syndrome, became more significant in these communities as years went on. And by 1981-82, the annual rate in the United States for Cambodians was 59 in 100,000, 82 out of 100,000 among a mix of Laotian ethnic groups, and 92 out of 100,000 out of Laotian Hmong men.
So Laos has got a problem with this.
Yeah. I think they're still to this day trying to figure out what genetically or, you know, in the bloodlines is like causing some of these heart failures to be so common. Because, you know, that's not a huge percentage, but it's 92 out of 100,000 dropping dead from a heart problem that's undetectable until it strikes.
Sure.
Is, not great. There's
No, you don't want to be on the higher side of that, like roulette table chances or whatever. Like if you have a better chance of winning at some sort of high stakes gambling game than you do.
Yeah.
Like at walking through a day alive.
Yeah,
you might be a moment to stop and be concerned.
So in my journey through all of the terrible, unexpected, and instant ways to die, I found a few that come from way out of left field, and I thought I'd share these with you, Ed, so we could discuss how likely an oops these deaths could be for us.
Oh, good.
These are all sourced from a BuzzFeed article that in turn sources from Reddit users, so grain of salt.
Oh my God, yeah.
But the first one we've got here, quote, "My wife's cousin was on a party bus a couple years ago. They were all dancing on the bus while it was driving on the 101 freeway in LA. She slipped and fell against the door, which gave way. She fell out of the bus and was immediately run over by a car. There wasn't much left of her, closed casket for sure. She was celebrating her 30th birthday, but instead she died and left behind 5 kids, all under the age of 10.
Oh my God.
Jesus Christ.
Oh my God. Or she was like, I can't spend one more fucking minute with these kids that outnumber me and my husband, or just me.
My first thought was like, did she fall or did she jump? Because 5 kids, I mean, my sister Mimi, love you Mimi, has 7 kids, all under the age of 10, and God bless, but I don't know, this woman...
Yeah, there might be a version where at a certain point it goes from God bless to RIP God bless when it comes to that, so...
Yeah, exactly. The scales tip. But I don't know. I've never been on a party bus, so this is an unlikely sudden death for me.
Oh, me too. I get so nauseous with any kind of like motion stuff. There's no way I'm going to be like drinking on a thing that's moving that also presumably by its name has like disco ball or light ball machine.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, oh, I got fucking lights. We're moving. We're on the 101. It's hot in here. The AC's not getting all the way back to where I am.
I'm surprised this doesn't really happen more often.
Well, I think those doors don't really very easily swing open. So
They shouldn't. That's an error.
Also, if I'm a bus driver, I want that same kind of like, elementary school bus driver energy of like, you don't cross the line. There's a line right here, and you don't come in front of the line where the driver is. You'd have to pass that line to fall out the fucking doors.
Yeah.
So if anything, she's like talking to the driver up there.
Yeah, or maybe
being a fucking drunk mess.
Yeah, she was being a drunk mess, and the driver was
booted her.
Woo! And he's like, I don't know, the doors just malfunctioned.
Oh my God. And that my size foot mark on her butt kicked her out.
Yeah.
This guy never convicted.
So that's a crazy sudden death. Unlikely for me. Here's the next one. There's a fact about potatoes I didn't know, and this is relevant. If potatoes are not stored properly and become rotten, they can produce a toxic gas called solanine, which can make a person unconscious if they inhale enough and result in death in some cases.
Wow.
Which prompted a Reddit user to share this story. My grandma had a potato box in her kitchen, which is exactly what it sounds like. Now, it's not exactly what it sounds like because a potato box also sounds like a box made of potatoes, which this is not.
Okay, yeah.
It was a wooden box about the size of a trash can, and it had a lid on top that she stored potatoes in. When I was 10 or so, I was playing in the kitchen and I got curious about it. I was never especially interested because, it was a potato box. What do I want to look at some potatoes for? But for whatever reason, I got curious, opened the lid, and woke up on the floor sometime later with my chest burning so badly I could barely breathe.
So you think there was a face hugger in there that jumped up on him?
No, I think it was solanine gas that jumped up on him.
Less exciting.
I didn't find out why exactly that happened until I was an adult and saw a comment like this on Reddit, but I was scared to go even near that damn potato box for the rest of my childhood.
Yeah, because you were possessed by whatever came out of it.
Yeah, a demonic jack-in-the-box that just fucked you up.
Because there is inherently, by his own admission, a lack of like remembering a time period. Like he lost a track of time. So we can implement anything we want in there. Like a ghost flew out, a face hugger flew out, a demonic Jack in the Box. His grandma just hit him over the back of the head with a fucking rolling pin.
Yeah, she was like, "Don't go in the fucking potato box."
I said don't touch a potato box.
I think this is unlikely. A potato box sounds like something that my Italian grandmother would have had or something, but I feel like it's unlikely for me now because I think this is something that would only kill a young child or an old person.
Like the flu.
Yeah, like I don't know how deadly this gas normally is. It seems like this person got a whiff of it. Although, god damn, how long had it been since grandma made a potato? If you could open it up and get knocked out.
If it's anything like one of my grandmother's houses, it's everything that you're fed is like. Anyone else would have thrown this away a while ago.
Yeah.
So she might be like one of those Nonas, you know? Live through the depression Nonas.
She was trying to create enough solanine gas to kill her husband. She's like, fuck, no one was supposed to open the potato box.
I said do not open. It's written right on there. Yeah, but in Italian, Grandma. We couldn't read that shit.
Yeah. So this last one I wanted to touch on, garage door springs are one to look out for. According to the Consumer Product Safety Commission, about 30 people are killed in garage door accidents each year, and about 2/3 of those are due to accidents involving springs.
Like they snap? Mm-hmm. Because it's not like in Scream where for some reason Rose McGowan or whatever
I think
died from, I guess, getting closed in it? I don't know how that worked exactly.
Yeah, Ghostface like snaps her neck or breaks her back with it.
Yeah.
Some of those accidents I think are garage doors falling on people, which I guess technically involves the spring because it breaks. But I think particularly they're talking about people who are hit by a broken spring.
Runaway springs, dude.
They store large amounts of energy to move your garage door up and down smoothly. And if one of those springs snaps, it could fly off at the speed of a bullet, but much larger. A Reddit user named Colonel Fuzzy Carrot did some rough math and placed the amount of force held in a garage door spring at 3,000 pounds of pressure per square inch.
Wow. So those are, it sounds like installing one of these is dangerous.
It is. Well, so as I was researching this, most of what I found were not stories of people. I actually couldn't find, well, let me back up. Everything I found were garage door installer people being like, never try to do this yourself. It only costs a few $100 for us to do it right. People die and get injured all the time from trying to change their garage door springs, especially if they're rusty. They can just break. But I couldn't find an actual documented case. It was a lot of like, oh, my cousin died this way.
Sure.
But I couldn't find like a newspaper thing that was like, we found, George whatever in the garage with a hole through his chest because the garage door spring went through him.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe it's just a competitive market, and then that's the way that they stay in business is by like putting out into the world that if you do it yourself, you will end up with a fucking hole in your chest.
Yeah.
So you might as well call us at 1-800-DON'T-DIE-SPRINGS.
Yeah. I will say Reddit is full of both stories of people who heard like a loud noise in their garage and thought somebody fired a shotgun or something and would then go out into the garage and would find like holes through the ceiling or the wall or their car. Mm-hmm. And there are lots of stories on Reddit with disgusting photos included that I do not recommend you go looking for of people who have been injured by flying garage door springs. But again, I could not find a death of someone who was killed by one of these. And I also, 3,000 pounds of pressure per square inch sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know, but if Colonel Fuzzy Carrot's math is correct there.
Even if it isn't, we'll take them. We don't have the time to fact check everything Colonel Fuzzy Rabbit says. Or
I did put the link to his post in the show notes, so if someone wants to check that math, go for it. But I mean, that's a lot because a spring is, what are those, like 12 inches long, probably a garage door spring. So that's 36,000 pounds of pressure released in an instant.
Oh, no, you're speaking a totally different language to me right now. I can't do math.
Yeah. So anyway, stay away from garage door springs in general. And if you don't want to get paranoid, don't go reading these subreddits because a lot of people were like, yeah, every time I go in my garage, I just imagine that's the day it's going to break and shoot off and kill me.
Oh, that's the first world problems. You have a fucking garage. Cool for you.
Yeah. It's a real Final Destination way to go out. I feel like, is it the X-Files? I feel like I have seen something where a guy gets hit with a garage door spring, but I can't place it. Maybe Final Destination or the X-Files? I don't know. Someone might know.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
So, as we bring this episode to a close, we've learned that sudden death is around every corner. But I don't want to end the episode without discussing the opposite of sudden, instant, unlucky death. I want to end on a hopeful note. So it's a hopeful note that also keeps me up at night, which is a rare thing, because there is a theory called quantum immortality, and it's been called one of the most dangerous theories in mathematics. I think it's been called one of the most dangerous theories for two reasons. The first, and the one that I think they mean when they call it that, is that the theory itself might tempt people to try and cheat death. We'll unpack how and why in a few minutes.
Oh my God.
But this theory boils down to quantum roulette, or quantum suicide, as it's sometimes called. And here's why. Imagine you're playing Russian roulette. Again, I stress imagine. Do not do this. This is a thought experiment. Actually, you know what? Can we have Mr. Disclaimer step in here and reiterate that this is a thought experiment and you should not try it?
Yeah, 1 second. Let me try him. Beep, boop, bop, boop, 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 beep, boop, 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 boop.
We're sorry, the number you are trying to reach has what is formerly known as coronavirus disease 2019, and less formally known as COVID-19, or just Rona to friends. Either way, he's in bed with that Rona.
Yeah, no dice. Looks like he's not well.
Yeah. So you're playing Russian roulette. 5 chambers of the revolver are empty. 1 chamber has a bullet.
So traditional rules.
Traditional, yeah, we're not doing
Scandinavian roulette or...
Yeah, no modifiers here. Quantum immortality suggests that no matter how many times you pull the trigger, you'll never get the one with the bullet. Why? Because our consciousness, this posits, is persistent across timelines. So if you do fire the bullet and blow your head off in this timeline, you'll never know, because your consciousness will shift to a timeline in which you don't. So if someone's playing with you, they'll see you blow your head off, but you won't. It'll just click and you'll be in a timeline where it doesn't go off.
Well, what about the person whose consciousness is already in that timeline? Did you kick them out of their fucking brain? Did you quantum leap over their situation?
I think it's all happening simultaneously. So all of our consciousnesses in all our infinite realities exist all at the same time.
Well, yeah, you can't test this theory.
Well, that's why they call it dangerous, because they don't want people to test it. Because if people test it, they could end up killing themselves very easily.
No, they will end up killing themselves, even if they're successful. In order for it to be proven success, you have to die and then end up in a different multidimensional version where you're also stupid enough to play Russian roulette. So it's like, oh, let me do this lateral move into an equally dumb person.
Well, the other reason that I think it's called dangerous, or the other reason that I would call it dangerous at least, is that it's one of those theories that is based on what seems like a very theoretical and loose definition of different mathematical theories. It skews much less hard math and more new age psychology, which makes it dangerous because people hear it and think they understand quantum physics. And I want to underline, they probably don't. I for sure don't, which is why I'm going to quote heavily from sources who know what they're talking about. So how would this work? Let's start with some quantum basics. According to Psychology Today, quote, in the 1920s, the great Nobel laureate Niels Bohr offered what became known as the Copenhagen interpretation, which essentially said that all possibilities hover invisibly in the form of a wave function. The act of observing, said Bohr, causes this wave function to collapse, which means that the multiple possibilities suddenly vanish in favor of one definite result.
It's a Michigan J. Frog situation.
It's a Michigan J. Frog. It's a Schrodinger's cat. But for all its revolutionary insight, this interpretation had no answer for why one reality should emerge instead of another. Then in 1957, Hugh Everett proposed a remarkable alternative in which no particular single collapse need occur, because, in fact, every option occurs. He posited that instead of wave function collapse, the universe branches into separate forks so that all possibilities unfold. The observer is part of the fork or branch in which he observes, in this case, the particle with an upspin, but a separate copy of himself sees a particle with a downspin. You'll recognize this, the article says, as the many worlds interpretation.
Sure, multiverse.
Or Marvel movies, yeah.
Yeah.
So when we combine that many worlds theory with something known as the anthropic principle, we land in quantum immortality land. A physicist writing for Ask a Mathematician, and I should say an anonymous physicist because they probably don't want to be responsible for anything that happens, puts it like this. Quote, the anthropic principle says that whatever needed to happen in order for an observer to be observing happened. So, for example, you're reading this because, among other things, you have access to the internet, speak English, live in an environment capable of supporting life, and were born rather than not born. For anyone or anything not reading this, none of those things may necessarily be true. So on its own, the anthropic principle is already pretty powerful. It is the governing principle behind why you are here signs are always accurate. It explains why the Earth is capable of supporting introspective critters such as ourselves, despite all of the incredibly unlikely things that had to go right for that to happen. That last bit shouldn't seem too surprising. If only 1 in a million planets can support life, where would you expect to find living things? It sort of reminds me, to go off book for a second here, of a conversation I was actually just having with my father-in-law while I was in North Carolina, who he's a very devout Christian, and he was talking about how, you know, if certain elements and particles were just 1/100 billionth different in the universe, life wouldn't exist. So therefore, there must have been a creator who set it that way.
Intelligent design, yeah.
And what the anthropic principle suggests is, no, it is the random luck that those pieces all fell into place. The only reason it seems bizarre is because we happened to result from it, and we are observing that it is bizarre. But all the other versions where that didn't happen, it just didn't happen. So there was no one to think that it's lucky.
Those arguments sound exactly the same to me, honestly. Like, both are unprovable. Both are weirdly taken on faith. And both have a scapegoat, which is we can't see God, and it's random. So
I see. You mean both what I'm saying and what my father-in-law was saying.
Yeah. So yeah, both what you're describing is that theory and religion in general.
Yes.
Yeah, they both rely on just being like, yeah, I just think this is. I think this thing. I think that thing. So
well, I think when you get this theoretical, yes, you do get closer to faith.
But I will say this: if I'm ever, yes, they say there's no atheists in a foxhole. Like, if I'm in a war and I see something about, you know what I mean? Like, there's no way where I'm like, oh, random universe spark, get me out of this.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, you know, for scientists and mathematicians, they would tell you that the reason that these theories are different is because they are able to test and retest and hypothesize and discount different elements of these theories. Whereas there is a certain element of accepting that your data is accurate, but there's the ability to look at the math and the numbers and go, okay, this makes sense this way, this doesn't make sense that way. And in a sense, your faith in these numbers and this math is that we have centuries of math that we've been building that seems to function by the fact that the world we've built out of that math functions around us. I do think we are, from my extraordinarily dumb guy perspective, it does seem like, some of the advanced physics that we're exploring are reaching a point where there's gonna need to be some kind of breakthrough to start explaining all of the holes. Like, there are a lot of holes in
quantum theory or whatever.
Yeah. In like quantum theory, like there's a lot of relying on like, this whole piece of the equation over here, we invented this thing called dark matter for it to make sense. What is dark matter? We don't really know, but 88% of the universe is made up of it. So just go with that.
Anytime the math doesn't work out, that's dark matter at work.
Yeah. And so, yes, there is once you get to those levels, it does start to become very philosophical and very theoretical, and there's an element of faith. But anyway, what I was getting to, and the reason I got momentarily confused by what you were saying, is that to arrive at quantum immortality, there are two theories that are being combined. The many worlds theory of physics and the anthropic principle of observation. These two ideas were combined as a thought experiment in the late 1980s, and then more fully formulated by the physicist and cosmologist Max Tegmark. He suggests that we may die many times in our lifetime, and each time we die, our consciousness moves, slides, jumps, or shifts into the next timeline, very similar to the one in which we died. It means we can experience death, yet remain alive in the next timeline. Basically, if a situation can end with you either alive or dead, and every result literally does happen in multi-worlds theory, then the anthropic principle dictates that you will always experience a result where you live. No matter how unlikely, if there is a non-zero chance of surviving, then you always do. From your point of view, the world around you does whatever crazy contortions it must to ensure your continued point of view. Which is it's very human-centric. It's literally, I think, I didn't jot this down, but I'm pretty sure that theory also has become known as biocentrism. Because it is it prioritizes the idea of consciousness and human biology over all else.
Consciousness is the one thing I feel like we don't have any solid evidence of what the fuck it is.
Yeah, no,
like for real. No one has really any fucking clue, which is why the AI, coming sentient is a difficult thing to kind of comprehend. But that's a tough one. So even if I slid into another, you got a quantum leap. You got to still be, at the end of the day, the guy that you were when you entered the new body.
But there's two things about this theory that I think kind of bump for me. The first is this idea, and again, at a higher level of math, maybe someone explains this in a way that makes more sense. I'm just speaking as a layman here, but the idea that our consciousness, should you die in this lifetime, moves, slides, jumps, or shifts into the next timeline. How are we quantifying the next timeline? You know what I mean? Like, why are we saying that it's sliding into one where everything is exactly the same as it was in the one you were just in? It seems like there'd be just as great of a chance that you'd slide into one where everything's wildly different, which would be death. Right? Like, you go away and you go into something completely unimaginable, which is nothingness, makes more sense to me than like, oh, conveniently, I just step into the next one where everything's the same, except I'm alive and Bernstein Bears is spelled differently or whatever
We'll get into that in a future episode about potential CIA psyops, but
yeah. But, so that bumps for me because the idea of next is just such a, it's such a narrative idea. It's a story. It's a comprehensible human idea, not a universal incomprehensible idea, which I feel like a lot of these things should lean towards. They should skew incomprehensible, not sensible.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like we're pretty far off from where this episode started. So
well, it's sudden death. This is the opposite of this is something that would happen should you suddenly die.
Yeah, potentially. There was, I don't remember if it was a DC or a Marvel character. There was this character in comics that I always thought was cool. Steve would know if he was here. But there's a character or a team or what have you that they would go to the moment of your death in all these different timelines. And they like people, the second they were going to die, they would pull them out. And so that way to the world that you're in, it very much felt like, oh, they died. Mm-hmm. And it was the second they were going to die. And so you're not interrupting the timeline of this world. You are taking them away at the moment they're supposed to die.
Yeah.
But then you now have them in this other timeline where you can use them as like a member of the team. I always thought that was a cool use of both time travel and multiversal stuff, where it's like, it's a fun way to do time travel without affecting the timeline.
Yeah.
Steve says Ed's thinking of the Marvel comic book, Exiles.
But yeah, all this shit is just stupid.
Well,
like that's what I'm saying. It's comic book stuff. Like, but we have, I don't know, people with government grants sitting and thinking about like, oh, well, I think for all of us, there's a veil that's directly beside us where, you know, a rich man is a poor man in a different universe, and will he appreciate living by skipping into the next timeline, but is now poor? Yeah. And it's like, I'd rather you just fucking kill me. Like,
yeah, please give me a gun with one of those bullets in it. Let's see how this goes.
Yeah, because it's like you said, or the version that you're saying, which is like, yeah, I died instantly, but I woke up and I don't remember my previous life, and now this is hell.
Well,
like,
and
sucks.
that's the other place that this breaks down for me is if quantum immortality states that on a certain timeline you never die. Sure, I get in the car crash, you know, gunshot, instantaneous, whatever. But what happens at the point where we all reach 120 years old and we all just die because our cells are starting to shut down? Are we saying that on a long enough quantum timeline, everybody reaches that point and then like doesn't die and just lives at 120 years old forever, or just keeps getting older and keeps almost dying over the course of 6 months and getting cancer treatments? And like,
it would have to be that Instagram video we have in one of our show notes where they're just like peeling off heads, putting your brain onto a new, younger body or into a robot or something. Because, at the end of the day, you're going to have a biological breakdown of your body, so you can't really keep kicking it at 150.
Right. And I guess that's what I'm saying is if this slide into the next timeline only happens at the moment of death, for a lot of people, that moment of death comes at the end of a very long and slow downturn.
Unless it's a sudden death.
Right. So what I'm saying, though, is on those long quantum timelines, what happens at the end of that long, slow downturn where you don't die? You just stay in your hospital bed? Like, that's where it breaks down for me.
Sure. I mean, it's all stupid, so...
it's like I really want to go start drinking.
Well, no, I thought that this was going to be more akin to Spontaneous Human Combustion episode where we had a bunch of stories, and this was more about like I didn't know we were going to go into this existential crisis where we maybe come across sounding like fucking idiots.
Well, hey, you know what? Sounding like fucking idiots is part of what we do best on this show. So
please send me to a universe where I'm not a dummy.
Send us to a universe where we're on season 10 of this show and we're millionaires.
Hell yeah, dude. Because we're going to say in this universe where we're on season 10 and still 100 airs. So
yeah. So to wrap up, this article says quantum suicide and quantum immortality get their name from this idea that it may be impossible to die from your point of view, no matter how hard you try. And again, that last part, no matter how hard you try, is what makes this theory dangerous. You should not try. We do not know if this theory works, so do not try.
Don't do this. Don't do flatlining shit.
Yeah. But it's a pretty cool idea. It does make me feel a lot better about randomly and instantly dying, although it does make me think if literally anything that can happen eventually will happen, that means there is a universe where my head explodes right now. So before that happens, let's get to the fear tier. Ed, where do you place sudden death on the fear tier?
I fucking welcome it. I put it as a 1. I try and live my life where if I died tomorrow, it's fine.
Again, so crazy that Ed tempts fate here, and then a couple hours later fate's like hold my beer. But not today, fate. Maybe come back when we do an episode about the fear of being too happy, or a fear of overwhelming success or something.
All right, well, we're split on this one then, because I would put this even higher than a hot bucket of piss and shit. The idea that I could drop dead suddenly with no warning or explanation that I would ever know is one of the scariest things I could ever think of, which is why I wanted to open season 4 with this idea.
But it's sudden. It's sudden. By the fucking definition, you're realistically, and by your definition that you one time used in an episode where you're like, oh, if you're shot by a bullet or something, then you wouldn't even know because of a lapse or whatever. So if it's that sudden, let's say you go to heaven or another universe and you're just like, what happened? And they're like, oh, a fucking piano fell on you. Like, it's inconvenient, but that's way better than like months of chemo or being sick or brittle bones.
Sort of, but I think it's much more likely that you just don't exist. And if once you don't exist, it's like you never existed.
That's fine. I don't care. I am a 1 on sudden death.
I'm a 15.
There's no death where I'm like, that's my preferred death. So I guess by virtue of that, it's low because I don't care.
I mean, it's probably better than getting eaten alive.
100% better.
But
I don't know. You wait. So what's our top? Our top one was, it might be waking up during surgery these days and feeling it.
Yeah.
I think it might be our top one these days. So you think sudden death is scarier than waking up during surgery and feeling it?
I mean, it's up there. I guess it is more psychologically frightening to me because of that idea that should my life be taken from me in an instant, I would never know that I existed. Every joy, every sadness, every love, everything would just be gone and mean nothing.
But you get that regardless by your own dark view of death.
But my point is, if you have what people call a good death, where you know it's coming and you're surrounded by family members and you can talk to everybody, you can at least contextualize it and fade away knowing that, like, having that moment while you're alive. I agree that, yes, ultimately it is all meaningless, but it is, I think, better to go out feeling the love than to go out without knowing you're even going to go out.
Okay, I see. So this is an existential crisis for you.
Yeah.
For me, yeah, it's a 1, a 2. I don't. If it happens, it's like it's so out of my control, and it just happens, and it's a random act.
Yeah.
And if it isn't a random act, then somebody afterwards, I'm gonna have some explaining to do.
If it's one of our less mentally well-off fans breaking into,
don't you dare, people, don't you even
dare do it. You love this show. You know you love this show. If you have strange fantasies about killing us,
keep it to yourself.
And you know what? Just subscribe a second time to make yourself feel better.
To the premium.
Yeah. But yeah, all right. Welcome to season 4. I hope you guys love what we have in store. You don't know what we have in store, but trust me, it's a good season, and we can't wait to share it with you all. So share your favorite episodes. Go back and listen to the stuff that you may have missed. Get caught up with where we're at. You know we love a callback. Until then, my name is Chris Cullari.
And my name is Ed Voccola.
And this has been Scared All the Time. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Scared All the Time is co-produced by Chris Cullari and Ed Voccola.
Written by Chris Cullari.
Edited by Ed Voccola.
Additional support and Keeper of Sanity is Tess Feifel.
Our theme song is the track Scared by Perpetual Stew.
And Mr. Disclaimer is...
And just a reminder, you can now support the podcast with SAP Premium and get all kinds of cool shit in return. Depending on the tier you choose, we'll be offering everything from ad-free episodes, producer credits, exclusive access, and exclusive merch.
So go and sign up at scaredallthetimepodcast.com.
Don't worry, all scaredy cats welcome.
No part of this show can be reproduced anywhere without permission. Copyright Astonishing Legends Productions.
Good night.
We are in this together.
Together.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.